May 21st is the 141st day of the year, 142nd in leap years, in the Gregorian calendar. There are 224 days remaining until the end of the year. This date is slightly more likely to fall on a Monday, Thursday or Saturday, 58 and 400 years each, than on Tuesday or Wednesday, 57, and slightly less likely to occur on a Friday or Sunday, 56. Events 293 Roman emperors Diocletian and Maximian appoint Galerius as Caesar to Diocletian, beginning the period of four rulers known as the Tetrarchy. 878 Syracuse, Sicily, is captured by the Muslim Aghlabids after a 9-month siege. 879 Pope John VIII gives blessings to Branimir of Croatia and to the Croatian people, considered to be international recognition of the Croatian state. 996 16-year-old Otto III is crowned Holy Roman Emperor. 1349 Dušan's Code, the constitution of the Serbian Empire, is enacted by Dušan the Mighty. 1403 Henry III of Castile sends Ruy González de Clavijo as ambassador to Timor to discuss the possibility of an alliance between Timor and Castile against the Ottoman Empire. 1554 Queen Mary I grants a royal charter to Derby School, as a grammar school for boys in Derby, England. 1659 In the Concert of The Hague, the Dutch Republic, the Commonwealth of England and the Kingdom of France set out their views on how the Second Northern War should end. 1660 Adam Dollard des Ormeaux and his caravan explosively suffer an Iroquois defeat at Longsu. 1674 The nobility elect John Sobieski King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. 1725 The Order of St. Alexander Nevsky is instituted in Russia by Empress Catherine I. It would later be discontinued and then reinstated by the Soviet government in 1942 as the Order of Alexander Nevsky. 1758 10-year-old Mary Campbell is abducted in Pennsylvania by Lenape during the French and Indian War. She is returned 6.5 years later. 1792 Mount Unzen, near the city of Shimabara, Nagasaki, on the island of Kyushu, Japan's southernmost main island, erupts, creating the deadliest mega-tsunami that kills 14,524 people, as also a pyroclastic flow in 1991. 1809 The first day of the Battle of Aspern-Essling between the Austrian army led by Archduke Charles and the French army led by Napoleon I of France sees the French attack across the Danube held. 1851 Slavery is abolished in Colombia, South America. 1856 Lawrence, Kansas is captured and burned by pro-slavery forces. 1863 American Civil War, the Union Army succeeds in closing off the last escape route from Port Hudson, Louisiana, in preparation for the coming siege. 1864 Russia declares an end to the Russo-Circassian War and many Circassians are forced into exile. The day is designated the Circassian Day of Mourning. 1864 American Civil War, the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse ends. 1864 The Ionian Islands reunite with Greece. 1871 French troops invade the Paris Commune and engage its residents in street fighting. By the close of Bloody Week, some 20,000 communards have been killed and 38,000 arrested. 1871 Opening of the first rack railway in Europe, the Rigi-Banan on Mount Rigi. 1879 War of the Pacific, 2 Chilean ships blocking the harbor of Iquique, then belonging to Peru, battle 2 Peruvian vessels in the Battle of Iquique. 1881 The American Red Cross is established by Clara Barton in Washington, D.C. 1894 The Manchester Ship Canal in the United Kingdom is officially opened by Queen Victoria, who later knights its designer Sir Edward Leader Williams. 1904 The Federation Internacional de Football Association, FIFA, is founded in Paris. 1911 President of Mexico Porfirio Diaz and the revolutionary Francisco Madero sign the Treaty of Ciudad Juárez to put an end to the fighting between the forces of both men, concluding the initial phase of the Mexican Revolution. 1917 The Commonwealth War Graves Commission is established through Royal Charter to mark, record and maintain the graves and places of commemoration of Commonwealth of Nations military forces. 1917 The Great Atlanta Fire of 1917 causes $5.5 million in damages, destroying some 300 acres including 2,000 homes, businesses and churches, displacing about 10,000 people but leading to only one fatality, due to heart attack. 1924 University of Chicago students Richard Loeb and Nathan Leopold, Jr. murder 14-year-old Bobby Franks in a thrill killing. 1927 Charles Lindbergh touches down at Le Bourget Field in Paris, completing the world's first solo non-stop flight across the Atlantic Atlantic Ocean. 1932 Bad weather forces Amelia Earhart to land in a pasture in Derry, Northern Ireland, and she thereby becomes the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. 1934 Oskaloosa, Iowa, becomes the first municipality in the United States to fingerprint all of its citizens. 1936 Sada Abe is arrested after wandering the streets of Tokyo for days with her dead lover's severed genitals in her handbag. Her story soon becomes one of Japan's most notorious scandals. 1937 A Soviet station, North Pole 1, becomes the first scientific research settlement to operate on the drift ice of the Arctic Ocean. 1939 The Canadian National War Memorial is unveiled by King George VI and Queen Elizabeth in Ottawa. 1946 Physicist Louis Slotin is fatally irradiated in a criticality incident during an experiment with the Demon Core at Los Alamos National Laboratory. 1951 The opening of the 9th Street Show, otherwise known as the 9th Street Art Exhibition, a gathering of a number of notable artists, and the stepping out of the post-war New York avant-garde, collectively known as the New York School. 1961 American Civil Rights Movement, Alabama Governor John Malcolm Patterson declares martial law in an attempt to restore order after race riots break out. 1966 The Ulster Volunteer Force declares war on the Irish Republican Army in Northern Ireland. 1969 Civil unrest in Rosario, Argentina, known as Rosariozo, following the death of a 15-year-old student. 1972 Michelangelo's Pietà in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome is damaged by a vandal, the mentally disturbed Hungarian geologist Laszlo Toth. 1976 The Yuba City bus disaster occurs in Martinez, California. 29 are killed, making it the deadliest road accident in U.S. history. 1979 White Night riots in San Francisco following the manslaughter conviction of Dan White for the assassinations of George Moscone and Harvey Milk. 1980 Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back is released in theaters. 1981 The Italian government releases the membership list of Propaganda Due, an illegal pseudo-Masonic lodge that was implicated in numerous Italian crimes and mysteries. 1982 Falklands War, a British amphibious assault during Operation Sudden leads to the Battle of San Carlos. 1991 Former Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi is assassinated by a female suicide bomber near Madras. 1991 Mengistu Haile Mariam, President of the People's Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, flees Ethiopia, effectively bringing the Ethiopian Civil War to an end. 1992 After 30 seasons Johnny Carson hosted his penultimate episode and last featuring guests, Robin Williams and Bette Midler, of The Tonight Show. 1994 The Democratic Republic of Yemen unsuccessfully attempts to secede from the Republic of Yemen, a war breaks out. 1996 The ferry MV Bukoba sinks in Tanzanian waters on Lake Victoria, killing nearly 1,000. 1998 In Miami, 5 abortion clinics are attacked by a butyric acid attacker. 1998 President Suharto of Indonesia resigns following the killing of students from Trisakti University earlier that week by security forces and growing mass protests in Jakarta against his ongoing corrupt rule. 2001 French Tabier law is enacted, officially recognizing the Atlantic slave trade and slavery as crimes against humanity. 2003 The 6.8 MW Boumerdis earthquake shakes northern Algeria with a maximum Mercalli intensity of X, extreme. More than 2,200 people were killed in a moderate tsunami sank boats at the Balearic Islands. 2005 The tallest roller coaster in the world, King Dakar opens at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson Township, New Jersey. 2006 The Republic of Montenegro holds a referendum proposing independence from the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro. 55 of Montenegrins vote for independence. 2010 JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, launches the solar sail spacecraft Ikaros aboard an HIIA rocket. The vessel would make a Venus flyby late in the year. 2011 radio broadcaster Harold Camping predicted that the world would end on this date. 2012 A bus accident near Himara, Albania kills 13 people and injures 21 others. 2012 A suicide bombing kills more than 120 people in Sana'a, Yemen. Births 120 BC, Aurelia Cotta, mother of Gaius Julius Caesar, d. 54 BC. 1471 Albrecht Dürer, German painter, engraver, and mathematician, d. 1528. 1497 Al-Hatib, Muslim jurist, d. 1547. 1527 Philip II II of Spain, d. 1598, 1653 Eleanor of Austria, Queen of Poland, d. 1697, 1688 Alexander Pope, English poet, essayist, and translator, d. 1744, 1755 Alfred Moore, American lawyer and judge, d. 1810, 1763 Joseph Fouché, French lawyer and politician, d. 1820, 1775 Lucien Bonaparte, French soldier and politician, d. 1840, 1780 Elizabeth Fry, English philanthropist and reformer, d. 1845, 1790 William Cavendish, 6th Duke of Devonshire, English politician, Lord Chamberlain of the Household, d. 1858, 1792 Gaspard Gustave de Coriolis, French mathematician and engineer, d. 1843, 1799 Mary Anning, English paleontologist, d. 1847, 1835 František Vostok, Czech-Austrian physician and academic, d. 1884, 1837 Itaaki Taisuke, Japanese soldier and politician, d. 1919, 1843 Charles Albert Gobet, Swiss lawyer and politician, and Nobel Prize laureate, d. 1914, 1843 Louis Renault, French jurist, educator, and Nobel Prize laureate, d. 1918, 1844 Henri Rousseau, French painter, d. 1910, 1850 Giuseppe Mercalli, Italian priest and volcanologist, d. 1914, 1851 Elie Acuto and Bourgeois, French police officer and politician, 64th Prime Minister of France, Nobel Prize laureate, d. 1925, 1853 Jacques-Marie Eugène Godefroy-Cavaignac, French politician, d. 1905, 1856 José Badal y Ordóñez, Uruguayan journalist and politician, President of Uruguay, d. 1929, 1860 Willem Einthoven, Indonesian Dutch physician, physiologist, and academic, Nobel Prize laureate, d. 1927, 1861 Abel Ayerza, Argentinian physician and academic, d. 1918, 1863 Archduke Eugen of Austria, d. 1954, 1864 Princess Stephanie of Belgium, d. 1945, 1873 Hans Berger, German neurologist and academic, d. 1941, 1882 Durar Gezi, Romanian journalist, author, and poet, d. 1967, 1884 Manuel Perez y Carriz, Uruguayan poet and publisher, d. 1920, 1898 Armand Hammer, American physician and businessman, founded Occidental Petroleum, d. 1990, 1898 Charles Elie Acuto and Hamas, Luxembourgian lawyer and judge, d. 1967, 1898 Carl Johnson, American long jumper, d. 1932, 1898 John McLaughlin, American painter and translator, d. 1976, 1901 Horace Heidt, American pianist, bandleader, and radio host, d. 1986, 1901 Sam Jaffe, American film producer and agent, d. 2000, 1901 Suzanne Liller, Belgian author and playwright, d. 1992, 1902 Erlov Ariel, American baseball player, d. 1983, 1902 Marcel Breuer, Hungarian-American architect and academic, designed the Ameritrust Tower, d. 1981, 1902 Anatol Litvak, Ukrainian-American director, producer, and screenwriter, d. 1974, 1903 Manly Wade Wellman, American author, d. 1986, 1904 Robert Montgomery, American actor and director, d. 1981, 1904 Fats Waller, American singer-songwriter and pianist, d. 1943, 1907 John C. Allen, American roller coaster designer, d. 1979, 1912 Chen Deu, Chinese painter and calligrapher, d. 2001, 1912 John Curtis Gowan, American psychologist and academic, d. 1986, 1912 Monty Stratton, American baseball player and coach, d. 1982, 1913 Gina Bachauer, Greek pianist and composer, d. 1976, 1916 Tinus Osendarp, Dutch sprinter and police officer, d. 2002, 1916 Harold Robbins, American author and screenwriter, d. 1997, 1917 Raymond Burr, Canadian-American actor and director, d. 1993, 1918 Dennis Day, American singer and actor, d. 1988, 1919 George P. Mitchell, American businessman and philanthropist, d. 2013, 1920 Bill Barber, American tuba player and educator, d. 2007, 1921 Sandy Douglas, Douglas, English computer scientist and academic, designed OXO, d. 2010. 1921 Andrei Sakharov, Russian physicist and academic, Nobel Prize laureate, d. 1989. 1923 Armand Borel, Swiss-American mathematician and academic, d. 2003. 1923 Ara Parseghian, American football player and coach, 1923 Dorothy Hewitt, Australian feminist poet, novelist and playwright, d. 2002. 1924 Peggy Cass, American actress, comedian, and game show panelist, d. 1999. 1926 Robert Creeley, American novelist, essayist, and poet, d. 2005. 1927 Kay Kendall, English actress and comedian, d. 1959. 1928 Alice Drummond, American actress, d. 2016. 1929 Robert Welch, English silversmith and industrial designer, d. 2000. 1930 Keith Davis, New Zealand rugby player, 1930 Malcolm Fraser, Australian politician, 22nd Prime Minister of Australia, d. 2015. 1932 Anis Johnsema, Latvian javelin thrower and surgeon, d. 2011. 1933 Maurice André, French trumpet player, d. 2012. 1933 Yevgeny Minaev, Russian weightlifter, d. 1993. 1934 Bob Northern, American horn player and bandleader, 1934 Bengt I. Samuelson, Swedish biochemist and academic, Nobel Prize laureate, 1935 Terry Lightfoot, English clarinet player and bandleader, d. 2013. 1936 Gunter Blobel, Polish-American biologist and academic, Nobel Prize laureate, 1939 Heinz Holliger, Swiss oboist, composer, and conductor, 1940 Tony Sheridan, English singer-songwriter and guitarist, d. 2013. 1941 Martin Carthy, English singer-songwriter, guitarist, and producer, 1941 Bobby Cox, American baseball player and manager, 1941 Ambrose Greenway, 4th Baron Greenway, English photographer and politician, 1941 Ronald Isley, American singer-songwriter and producer, 1942 David Hunt, Baron Hunt of Wirral, English politician, Secretary of State for Wales's, 1942 John Conrads, Australian swimmer, 1942 Danny Ongaze, American race car driver, 1943 Vincent Crane, English pianist and composer, d. 1989. 1943 John Dalton, English bass player, The Kinks, 1943 Hilton Valentine, English guitarist and songwriter, The Animals, 1944 Hala Afshar, Baroness Afshar, Iranian English academic and politician, 1944 Janet Daly, American author and entrepreneur, d. 2013. 1944 Mary Robinson, Irish lawyer and politician, 7th President of Ireland, 1945 Ernst Messerschmidt, German physicist and astronaut, 1945 Richard Hatch, American actor, writer, and producer, d. 2017. 1946 Wayne Roycroft, Australian equestrian rider and coach, 1947 Bill Champlin, American singer-songwriter, guitarist, and producer, 1947 Linda Laubenstein, American physician and academic, d. 1992. 1947 Ilber Ortayli, Turkish historian and academic, 1948 Elizabeth Buchan, English author and critic, 1948 Joe Camilleri, Maltese-Australian singer-songwriter and saxophonist, 1948 Jonathan Hyde, Australian English actor, 1948 Dennis McShane, Scottish journalist and politician, UK Minister of State for Europe, 1948 Leo Sayer, English-Australian singer-songwriter and musician, 1949 Andrew Neil, Scottish journalist and academic, 1949 Rosalind Plowright, English soprano, 1950 Will Hutton, English economist and journalist, 1951 Al Franken, American actor, screenwriter, and politician, 1951 Adrian Hardiman, Irish lawyer and judge, d. 2016. 1952 Mr. T, American actor and wrestler, 1953 Nora Honor, Filipino actress and recording artist, 1954 Mark Ribot, American guitarist and composer, 1955 Paul Barber, English field hockey player, 1955 Stan Lynch, American drummer, songwriter, and producer, 1957 James Bailey, American basketball player, 1957 Nadine Dorries, English nurse and politician, 1957 Judge Reinhold, American actor and producer, 1957 Renee Soutendijk, Dutch actress, 1958 Christian Audige, French fashion designer, d. 2015. 1958 Muffy Calder, Canadian-Scottish computer scientist and academic, 1958 Michael Crick, English journalist and author, 1958 Naeem Khan, Indian-American fashion designer, 1958 Jeffrey Levy, American director, producer, and screenwriter. 1959 Nick Cassavetes, American actor, director, and screenwriter. 1959 Abdullah Yamin, Maldivian politician, 6th President of the Maldives. 1960 Jeffrey Dahmer, American serial killer, d. 1994. 1960 Kent Herbeck, American baseball player and sportscaster. 1960 Mark Ridgway, Australian cricketer. 1960 Vladimir Salnikov, Russian swimmer. 1960 Jeffrey Toobin, American lawyer and essayist. 1960 Mohan Lal, South Indian actor. 1962 David Crumb, American composer and educator. 1963 Richard Apple, American screenwriter and producer. 1963 Dave Spector, American guitarist. 1963 Laurie Spina, Australian rugby league player and sportscaster. 1966 Lisa Edelstein, American actress and playwright. 1966 Tatiana Ledovskaya, Belarusian hurdler. 1967 Chris Benoit, Canadian professional wrestler, d. 2007. 1967 Blake Schwarzenbach, American singer and guitarist. 1968 Ilmar Raag, Estonian director, producer, and screenwriter. 1968 Matthias Angemach, German-Australian rower. 1968 Julie Vega, Filipino actress and singer, d. 1985. 1969 Georgi Gongadze, Georgian-Ukrainian journalist and director, d. 2000. 1969 Masao Kurata, Japanese voice actress and singer. 1969 George Lemieux, American lawyer and politician. 1969 Brian Statham, English footballer. 1970 Brigitte Bukovic, Slovenian hurdler. 1970 Dorsey Levens, American football player and sportscaster. 1970 Pauline Mencher, Australian surfer. 1970 Karl Vart, Australian footballer and coach. 1972 The Notorious B.I.G., American rapper, d. 1997. 1973 Stuart Sink, American golfer. 1974 Brad Arthur, Australian rugby league coach. 1974 Fairuza Balk, American actress. 1974 Havoc, American rapper and producer. 1975 Anthony Mundine, Australian rugby league player and boxer. 1976 Stuart Bingham, English snooker player. 1977 Quinton Fortune, South African footballer and coach. 1978 Jamal Maglare, Canadian basketball player and coach. 1979 Damian Ariel Alvarez, Argentinian Mexican footballer. 1979 Jamie Hepburn, Scottish politician, Minister for Sport, Health Improvement and Mental Health. 1979 James Clancy Felon, Australian author and academic. 1979 Scott Smith, American mixed martial artist. 1979 Sonia Vektimov, Czech musician, composer. 1980 Gautier, Belgian-Australian singer-songwriter. 1981 Craig Anderson, American ice hockey player. 1981 Edson Buddle, American soccer player. 1981 Josh Hamilton, American baseball player. 1981 Maximilian Mutzke, German singer-songwriter. 1981 Anna Rogowska, Polish pole vaulter. 1985 Mark Cavendish, Manx cyclist. 1985 Alexander Dale Oen, Norwegian swimmer, d. 2012. 1985 Isa Gua, English cricketer. 1985 Lucy Radecka, Czech tennis player. 1985 Kano, English rapper, producer, and actor. 1985 Dusan Kucek, Slovak footballer. 1985 Heath Lestrange, Australian rugby league player. 1985 Andrew Miller, American baseball player. 1986 Mario Mandzukic, Croatian footballer. 1986 Ader Sanchez, Mexican race walker. 1986 Park Seo-jin, South Korean singer-songwriter and dancer. 1987 Bo Falloon, Australian rugby league player. 1988 Claire Cashmore, English swimmer. 1988 Park Gyu-ri, South Korean singer. 1988 Johnny Howson, English footballer. 1989 Emily Robbins, New Zealand actress and singer. 1989 Hal Robson-Kanu, English footballer. 1990 Renee Krijn, Slovenian footballer. 1991 Guilherme, Brazilian footballer. 1993 Luke Garbett, English footballer. 1994 Tom Daley, English diver. 1996 Indy de Vroom, Dutch tennis player. 1997 Ivan DeSantis, Italian footballer. 1997 Victoria Petric, Ukrainian singer-songwriter. Deaths 954 Feng Dao, Chinese prince and chancellor. B. 882. 987 Louis V of France. B. 967. 1086 Wang Anshi, Chinese statesman, economist and poet. B. 1021. 1254 Conrad IV of Germany. B. 1228. 1416 Anna of Celja, Queen Consort of Poland, b. 1386, 1471 Henry VI of England, b. 1421, 1481 Christian I of Denmark, b. 1426, 1512 Pandolfo Petrucci, Italian ruler, b. 1452, 1524 Thomas Howard, 2nd Duke of Norfolk, English soldier and politician, Lord High Treasurer, b. 1443, 1542 Hernando de Soto, Spanish-American explorer, b. 1496, 1607 John Reynolds, English scholar and academic, b. 1549, 1639 Tommaso Campanella, Italian astrologer, theologian, and poet, b. 1568, 1647 Peter Cornelis Hooft, Dutch poet and playwright, b. 1581, 1650 James Graham, 1st Marquess of Montrose, Scottish general and politician, b. 1612, 1664 Elizabeth Poole, English settler, founded Taunton, Massachusetts, b. 1588, 1670 Niccolò Zucchi, Italian astronomer and physicist, b. 1586, 1690 John Eliot, English-American minister and missionary, b. 1604, 1719 Pierre Poiret, French mystic and philosopher, b. 1646, 1724 Robert Harley, 1st Earl of Oxford and Earl Mortimer, English politician, Chancellor of the Exchequer, b. 1661, 1742 Lars Roberg, Swedish physician and academic, b. 1664, 1771 Christopher Smart, English actor, playwright, and poet, b. 1722, 1786 Carl Wilhelm Scheele, German-Swedish chemist and pharmacist, b. 1742, 1790 Thomas Warton, English poet and critic, b. 1728, 1810 Chevalier d'Anne, French diplomat and spy, b. 1728, 1844 Giuseppe Baina, Italian priest and composer, b. 1775, 1862 John Drew, Irish-American actor and manager, b. 1827, 1879 Arturo Prat, Chilean lawyer and commander, b. 1848, 1894 Emile Henry, French anarchist, b. 1872, 1894 August Kunt, German physicist and academic, b. 1839, 1895 Franz von Sappe, Austrian composer and conductor, b. 1819, 1901 Joseph Olivier, French rugby player, b. 1874, 1911 Williamina Fleming, Scottish-American astronomer and academic, b. 1857, 1915 Leonid Gobiato, Russian general and engineer, b. 1875, 1919 Evgraf Fedorov, Russian mathematician, crystallographer, and mineralogist, b. 1853, 1920 Venustiano Carranza, Mexican politician, 54th President of Mexico, b. 1859, 1925 Hidezaburo Ueno, Japanese agriculturalist, Guardian of Hachiko, b. 1871, 1926 Ronald Furbank, English-Italian author, b. 1886, 1929 Archibald Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery, English politician, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, b. 1847, 1932 Marcel Boulanger, French fencer and author, b. 1873, 1935 Jane Addams, American activist and author, co-founded Hull House, Nobel Prize laureate, b. 1860, 1935 Hugo de Vries, Dutch botanist and geneticist, b. 1848, 1940 Billy Minter, English footballer and manager, b. 1888, 1949 Klaus Mann, German-American novelist, playwright, and critic, b. 1906, 1952 John Garfield, American actor, b. 1913, 1956 Harry Bensley, English businessman and adventurer, b. 1877, 1957 Alexander Vertinsky, Ukrainian-Russian singer-songwriter, actor, and poet, b. 1889, 1964 James Franck, German physicist and academic, Nobel Prize laureate, b. 1882, 1965 Geoffrey de Havilland, English pilot and engineer, designed the de Havilland Mosquito, b. 1882, 1968 Doris Lloyd, English actress, b. 1896, 1970 E. L. Grant Watson, English-Australian biologist and author, b. 1885, 1973 Vaughn Monroe, American singer, trumpet player, bandleader, and actor, b. 1911, 1981 Raymond McCreish, PIRA volunteer, b. 1957, 1981 Patsy O'Hara, INLA volunteer, b. 1957, 1983 Kenneth Clark, English historian and author, b. 1903, 1988 Sammy Davis, Sr., American actor and dancer, b. 1900, 1991 Lino Brocca, Filipino director and screenwriter, b. 1939, 1991 Rajiv Gandhi, Indian politician, 6th Prime Minister of India, b. 1944, 1995 Les Raspin, American captain and politician, 18th United States Secretary of Defense, b. 1938, 1996 Paul Delph, American singer-songwriter and producer, b. 1957, 1996 Lash LaRue, American actor and producer, b. 1917, 1996 Villamar Aam, Estonian art historian, art critic and conservator, b. 1910, 1998 Robert Gist, American actor and director, b. 1917, 2000 Barbara Cartland, English author, b. 1901, 2000 John Gielgud, English actor, b. 1904, 2000 Mark R. Hughes, American businessman, founded Herbalife, b. 1956, 2002 Nicky de Saint-Phalle, French-American sculptor and painter, b. 1930, 2003 Alejandro de Tomaso, Argentinian-Italian race car driver and businessman, founded de Tomaso, b. 1928, 2003 Frank D. White, American captain, banker, and politician, 41st Governor of Arkansas, b. 1933, 2005 Stephen Elliott, American actor, b. 1918, 2005 Howard Morris, American actor and director, b. 1919, 2006 Spencer Clark, American race car driver, b. 1987, 2006 Katherine Dunham, American dancer, choreographer, and author, b. 1909, 2006 Cherd Songsri, Thai director, producer, and screenwriter, b. 1931, 2006 Billy Walker, American singer-songwriter and guitarist, b. 1929, 2012 Konstantin of Iranopoulos, Metropolitan of Iranopoulos and Primate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the USA, b. 1936, 2012 Bill Stewart, American football player and coach, b. 1952, 2012 Alan Thorne, Australian anthropologist and academic, b. 1939, 2013 Frank Comstock, American trombonist, composer, and conductor, b. 1922, 2013 Cott Deal, American baseball player and coach, b. 1923, 2013 Leonard Marsh, American businessman, co-founded Snapple, b. 1933, 2013 Bob Thompson, American pianist and composer, b. 1924, 2013 Dominique Venner, French journalist and historian, b. 1935, 2013 David Volker, American businessman and philanthropist, b. 1953, 2014 Evelyn Blackman, American businesswoman and politician, b. 1924, 2014 Johnny Gray, American baseball player, b. 1926, 2014 Jaime Lucinchi, Venezuelan physician and politician, President of Venezuela, b. 1924, 2015 Twinkle, English singer-songwriter, b. 1948, 2015 Jassem Al-Kharafi, Kuwaiti businessman and politician, 8th Kuwaiti Speaker of the National Assembly, b. 1940, 2015 Fred Gladding, American baseball player and coach, b. 1936, 2015 Louis Johnson, American bass player and producer, b. 1955, 2016 Nick Menza, American drummer and songwriter, b. 1964, Holidays and observances Afro-Colombian Day, Colombia, Christian Feast Day, Arcangelo Tadini, Blessed Adelio Duranch and Manuel Gomez Gonzalez, Blessed Franz Jagerstatter, earliest day on which Corpus Christi can fall, while June 24th is the latest, held on Thursday after Trinity Sunday, often locally moved to Sunday, Roman Catholic Church, Emperor Constantine I, Eugene de Mazenod, Helena of Constantinople, also known as Feast of the Holy Great Sovereigns Constantine and Helen, equal to the Apostles, Eastern Orthodox Church, Anglican Communion, John Eliot, Episcopal Church, Saints of the Christ-era War, including Christopher Magellanes, May 21st, Eastern Orthodox Liturgics, Circassian Day of Mourning, Circassians, Day of Patriots and Military, Hungary, Independence Day, celebrates the Montenegrin independence referendum in 2006, celebrated until the next day, Montenegro, Navy Day, Chile, St. Helena Day, celebrates the discovery of St. Helena in 1502, St. Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha, World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development, International, external links BBC, on this day, The New York Times, on this day in Canada.